So here is the bracket of how it's going to be panned out. So we've got everyone's kind of usernames on Modo. Here we see the decks that they'll be playing in that top 8. So our undefeated player there, Mini0024 on Indomitable Creativity. That's how it'll look. Get their deck list up. They went undefeated yesterday. 0 losses. Can they continue that today? Let's find out. So this is their deck list. Anything particularly different here or stand out to you, Kanister? Is just a lot of good cards that you generally see in these matchups? And the game, it just did its job.
It's a pretty classic approach for the most part, using many of the cards that you frequently see in creativity. Of course, creativity being a 4 to 5 color deck, oftentimes pulls from a pretty decently sized card pool, so players have a good amount of choice in how exactly they'll fill out their slots. We have watched May0024 yesterday in a few very interesting matches, especially the one against Bern, where May carefully navigated around Orvars. I guess just sidestepped the Orvars with the Emrakul cyborg strategy, just switching
Yeah.
the creativity target entirely.
That's a huge good play. You know, obviously they know what to do in that matchup. Very versed with the deck, knowing that I don't really need to do this because it's an open deck list tournament, and then they remember everybody. It was open deck list all day, so they knew what cyborg cards could potentially be coming in. And realistically, Orvis doesn't come in against any other deck unless it's creativity. So good hedge on that.
Exactly.
Going to creativity, to go to the Emrakul. So all right, let's go back to the leaderboard. See who came in second place. It is going to be, we saw them multiple times on camera yesterday. I think they only ended picked up one loss, and that is O'Daniels. I can never pronounce that. Alokes. Sorry for pronouncing.
Danielakos.
That
Yeah.
was a big,
If you play Magic Online, if you play Magic Online challenges, then you almost assuredly have played against old Danielakos quite a bunch, as his basically trademark is to play blue-red deck of choice in any given format, and
well, let's see
both
if we can
a
get
very
that one on the screen.
very proficient player with both Pioneer Phoenix and modern Murktide, and we've seen uh, pretty good play from Oden Ilagos across many matches yesterday.
And this is the sideboard. The main thing that sticks out to me here with the whole 75 is the amount of one-ofs that are in that sideboard. I did just touch on it was open deck list tournament. Same thing in this top 8. Everyone knows what everyone's playing. They know the full list of, 80 cards, 95 cards, or 65, 75. There's a lot of different numbers in a deck list at the minute, which we'll come on to very recently. But how much of an advantage is having a lot of one-ofs in your sideboard?
Both the open decklist thing that you mentioned, and also the fact that Murktide is naturally a deck with a good amount of card selection. Dragon Raiders Channeler, Ledger Shredder, Iteration, Consider, Mishra's Bubble, and Fetchlands. All of those cards just like help you dig through your deck at a faster pace than most of your opponents are capable of doing so. So you will see your one-offs more often than your opponents will, and you will gain access to your unique effects quite often. So it makes plenty of sense to diversify your answers and threats this way.
Spell pit, wrong. Spell snare in the main. Are we going to see that counter any cards today? It's a bit of a talking subject for us yesterday. It's a lot of one-offs, but we saw it quite a lot. Do you think we're going to see that counter anything?
Well,
Are you going to hit or miss?
probably.
Are you calling it now or not? It's a yes or no answer, so I need 50%
Yes.
chance. Yes. Okay. Cool. Right. If it isn't, we get to rinse you. Let's go to the see who's in third place. Still staying with the top of our bracket here, and it is Jigok 1 on 4 or 5 color Omnath. But we'll have a look at that. The Omnath decks. There's some crazy numbers going on with these deck lists. Let's see if we can get their deck list up for us.
Yeah,
And this
just
is the generic 80 card version. Basically a Yorion deck. Take the Yorion out. A lot of good cards in 4 colors. We do say 5 colors, mainly to try and turn things on, like the Leyland's Binding, get them out cheaper. But talk to us about this. Why are we playing 80 cards when Yorion's banned in this format?
it's a good question. Like, one of the answers that is possible is that way you just get to fit more stuff into your deck. The traditional conventional wisdom dictates that playing a smaller deck is better for consistency, but certainly it does not limit some players. And some of the Omnath decks lately have been just experimenting with different amount of cards for with various justifications from like 60 something, 65 cards. I've seen 69 card decks. This one exactly that we see right in front of us is 80, just like the Yorion decks of odds. And given that it's an Eladamrical deck, you still get somewhat of an extended access to your sideboard bullets, so that could be used as a justification of going over a 60, and you just get to like fit more effects into your deck, which might actually matter if you end up playing long games.
And we did see yesterday some crazy sort of strategies, shall we say, yesterday from this player when they're playing against Living End decided to keep a no lander and just started ditching things to the graveyard as their game playing against Living End, and pretty good game. So if you didn't manage to catch that yesterday, make sure you go back and watch it on the VOD. It is definitely super entertaining, probably my highlight of yesterday, to be fair. But let's go to the last person in the top of our bracket in fourth place. It is Kazu. Okay, go on, you can pronounce the name. You know I'm bad at this.
With playing Yogmoth, we
Yeah,
see we
excellent.
see a blue mana symbol beneath the Yogmoth deck list. You could think that it's gonna be for Orvar. That would be a common blue splash,
Mm-hmm.
but that would be wrong. The blue card in this exact deck is actually a Phyrexian Metamorph, a copy of Phyrexian Metamorph in the sideboard, a presumably tutor target for Eldritch Evolution Court of Calling to help you maybe against Archons of Cruelty, maybe against some
Yeah.
other cards that you would like to copy, while also possibly serving as an extra value piece when copying your Undying creatures or stuff
Also,
like
quite
that.
a new flavor on this deck that we spoke about yesterday, the Bundle Grazer and Gogoi Rot Farm in this deck, as well as playing like a few more like kind of gardens in here. It's kind of changing its mana base up, not playing as many mana dorks, no Birds of Paradise in this list, only the one Ignoble Hierarch. So they're trying to go like ramp out and use a Burrow Grazer. I don't know if that's a hedge towards sort of like Ragavan decks, because obviously Grazer's a great blocker for that, or if
It
they just
seems
want
to
the
me seems to me like that's just partially an edge to block Ragavan, but also at the same time, it's also a way to make early spot removal worse against you. And there's no Birds of Paradise that you can shoot with a lightning bolt, and suddenly that card becomes much worse against the deck. And you still get to ramp with the Grazer ideally if things line up well for you, and you might sacrifice it to your Yawgmoth all the same. So it does function it does function better in the best
yeah.
draw that you can have, for
It
sure.
also survives things like running six pings and
Exactly.
an unholy heat early game when Delirium's not turned on, etc. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But that is going to be the top of our bracket. Let's look at the bottom half of our bracket. Coming in fifth place, who we got?
We've got Gartoro on creativity. Again, let's take a look at their deck list of choice.
Okay, slightly different. A few changes in the main. Talk us through these. Mainly the one that's looking at me is the change the equation. One of the new cards from the
Yeah,
new March Machine set.
change the equation being a interaction spell of choice here. Uh, the counter target spell with mana value 2 or less is fairly main deckable. In modern, you still hit lots of stuff. You hit, for example, the cascade spells, right? The namesakes, living end, and the rhinos. You can counter that, and you can also fight against counter spells, expressive iteration. So it does function as a regular card, and on top of that, you also get the extended effect against red and green cards specifically. So you get to be able to interact with some extra things like Primeval Titan or opposing Indomitable Creativities, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing about the card is just the mana cost. It's much easier for creativity to support cards that just have a
Same. Well, they've
single
got
mana
decided to go
symbol.
for the full two copies in the main, two in the sideboard. If we look at that sideboard, we do have an Emrakul. We saw that in the last kind of creativity, and we talked through like how that can be good in some matches and that. But they've also got an Elish Norn in there, one of the new ones, and a basic planes. Talk me through those.
Yeah, the basic planes is a tool that does help against Blood Moon. You get to have just more basics. You get to cast Leyline Binding, even if it's gonna be a bit costly. So that is a reasonable approach to me in that way. And here we
I'm
are
about to say we're just going
going
straight into our
much
feature match, which is
exactly.
going to be we didn't get a chance to get down to it there, but it is going to be the Raktos scam deck versus oh yeah, it is scam. It's definitely scam. Raktos scam
Yeah.
versus Murktide here in the hands. Obviously, it's Modo, so there's no play draw dependency on where you come in the standings. Modo does tell you who is going to go first, and it looks like Murktide is on the play. How much of an advantage is that going to be in the top 8 here?
Well, it's pretty nice to be on the play, of course, but I think as far as this matchup goes, if it does not come to an unanswered Ragavan, then it actually should be pretty close. The play advantage shouldn't be too high. Both players have cheap effects in their decks, and they are able to do powerful stuff without too much mana. And we see a very powerful thing happening already. Like, oh, Danielakos actually somewhat suffering from being on the play, maybe
Mm-hmm.
because plays out a turn one Dragon Age's Channeler just to develop, and AFX just is able to go Fury and then Undying Malice. Excuse me, Feign Death.
Super
Uh,
strong pay turn one, right? Gets in underneath. It now gets a +1/+1 counter, so Lightning Bolt can't be taken out. We're gonna have to rely on the Unholy Heat. We do have one in hand, but we do not have Delirium turned on currently. So we did see a game get closed out super quickly with one of these. 2 attacks in this plus the Lightning Bolt in hand, and that's just game. As a Ragavan is
mhm.
drawn for the turn and no second land drop.
No second land. A land would be huge for old Danielakos because old Danielakos is just a fetch land away from Delirium, right? Only one card type is missing with Unholy Heat, DRC, Bobble in the graveyard, so a fetch land would have been a super good draw to deal with this Fury before any amount of protection can happen. That said, a second Unholy Hit also gives you some protection. It means that a discard spell will not save this Fury from your interaction later in the game.
See if we can get their graveyard up to see what type of they're missing. Do they have creature artifact instant currently in there?
Yeah,
Yeah. So they're missing
a
sorcery or
land.
land. Fatal Push is
Eh,
going to take out that Ragavan, and we're going to come across for a nice 8 points of damage on turn number 2. Pretty crazy, but we do manage to hit our land off the top. But unfortunately, it's not a fetch land. It is just going to be a fiery, is it? We could get this in
Yeah,
the graveyard. Just
that's fairly painful,
it's
but
not
technically
ideal.
possible. Interestingly, AFX decided not to evoke a Grief, which you could do in order to protect your Fury from this play that I was about to mention. Double Unholy Heat is a way to deal with the Fury, right? You could just spend 2 deal 2s, and that puts the game like right back at dead even,
Yeah.
basically.
And we kind of see this with these like scam decks, right? Is they have a lot of they're very all in. It's like all if you can deal with it, cool. We're gonna have a game. We'll get to the mid range. I've kind of used my card advantage up by this point, but if they don't have it, like we've seen there, and we can just keep turning our Fury sideways, we're going to be able to close out the game pretty quickly. As we're going to see a Fury, a Grief exiled to the Grief, and we're going to take that expressive iteration out of the hand, just leaving him with a Spell Pierce and Counter Spell.
Yeah, and that's gonna turn the game into a very, very long game. Presumably, both players are just gonna sit there and not gonna be incentivized to do too much. AFX knows about the counter spell, so it's not really incentivized to play into it too hard. While Odanilakos just doesn't have much else in this counter spell, so obviously he's gonna hold it for a long amount of time. Plus extra removal in AFX's hands. Castle Locktwain looking like a pretty interesting card here.
Yeah. I was just literally
Although
just about to
it
bring that one up to you and talk to you about like, well, if the game starts going pretty long, this could be a good card for us. Um, I'm looking at what we've got. We've got 3 Fortresses in the main, and that and Grief about the only ways we've got to disrupt the hand to make way for something. A lot of land being drawn here, but we're kind of okay with this, right? With keep go. We've got cards in our graveyard. We're stopping them doing whatever they're trying to do. We could try and Grief here with a Famed Death effect, but we know about all the counter magic in the hand. We're just going to draw another card end of turn, and it is a Polluted Delta
Mhm.
into a swamp. So a lot. I don't know how many. Is that 4, 5, 6 land off the top maybe in a row? Pretty rough.
That is a lot of lands. Yeah, Odonilakos is not too mad about drawing lands, probably, as long as eventually uh, he's gonna find an expressive iteration rebuild and gain some card advantage. Because AFX is also stuck on resources, does not even able to use the castle, not even able to
Oh,
cast a Seasoned Pyromancer in hand thanks to the castle. And even if you would draw a fourth land right now, then a castle activation would be like what, six live? You can't really do that, so
yeah, it'd be pretty rough. And plus, we know he's got to fight. I suppose this is what we can cast this one, right? This one's gonna probably eat up that spell pierce in hand. Because we've got. Where do you sit on this? When do we just play into this counter magic and eventually it'll be gone, or is there a better line to take of wait when to fire it off? Potentially wait till we've got more land and we can cast 2 spells a turn. Like what's the sort of thinking behind playing when you know your opponent has counter spells?
in a situation like this, you're probably just better off just playing into it, right? It's not at the end of the world if your card gets countered, right? You would just have to play through them eventually. Your opponent will run out of them. There is the situations where you want to maybe avoid playing into them are more so better suited for matchups where your cards can have disproportionate amount of value attached to them, and some of your cards are much better than the others, for example.
Here's a
As you
great one off
see
the
in
top.
Thoughtseize, yeah, that's gonna trade for a counter spell.
So that takes counter spell that we knew about. So we knew there was a spell pierce. We know there was a counter spell in hand. We decided we don't want to go the grief route here into a feigned death because we know spell pierce will be able to counter the feigned death potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they could just take the spell pierce with the grief if it did resolve. But here's a great one for him. Now we've got a bit of pressure on the battlefield.
Yeah, of course, AFX has 2 removal spells. Still playing around Spell Pierce, I guess, as much as they can. There is no reason to let this Spell Pierce counter anything. I guess you can just wait and try to
Uh,
turn it into as little of a card as possible, even though your hand is so many spells that you could think that you could just uh, spew a card to trade off cards, but pretty good restraint from AFX, I think.
Do we have one of these games that you generally see these quite a bit in modern, well, just in Magic in general, with screw beating flood? Like at the minute, one
Mhm.
person's got all these cards in their hand that do all this stuff, but not enough land to cast them. The other side, someone's got all these lands, but not much interaction besides some counter spells. Do you think this game's gonna end up going that way, or and would you fire off the counter spell? And was going to be the next question, but that's going to answer it for me. They're going to stop that Dolphy Voidwalker. Draw a consider for the turn.
Well, I think currently AFX is advantaged. What Danielakos needs to happen is to top deck in expressive iteration. A card like Murktide is not gonna really cut it itself because of the Terminate. Uh,
I think we had the option
although,
to draw a Ledger Shredder there, and we decided against it, put it in the graveyard, go one deeper, and obviously we end up hitting another
yeah,
land.
you end
Now
up
here's
hitting
our
another
fourth
land,
land
but
drop.
I think Danielakos is just looking for the iteration because just realizing that that's kind of the key card to turn the scales back.
Well,
in
Lightning Bolt's going to stop the grief, so it turns off the pressure a little bit more. So we've got a couple more draw steps potentially.
Yeah,
We
by starting
know
to get rough because now there is pressure from AFX's side. Seasoned Pyromancer is gonna produce 4 monsters ready to attack. Danielakos is still only at 9 life because of that early Fury hit.
we're going to ditch the Blood Moon and Fury here, replace that with a Seasoned Pyromancer and a Terminate. Ragavan drawn for the turn, not great on the turn after Seasoned Pyromancer comes down and brings on a couple of its friends, these little 1/1 elemental tokens. See
It's a
what
bit late
AFX
for
can
Ragavan to
draw.
matter, yeah.
Okay, land off the top, but this is one of those are we calling them spell lands? A land that's got an effect that we can mill ourselves 4 cards, bring back a creature or a planeswalker from our graveyard, and put it into our hand. And obviously, that can be done at instant speed if needs be. This is quite a safe attack coming across because then we do have the Terminate in hand, and if something like blocking the Pyromancer that happened, we do have a Feign Death, so we'd be able to get extra triggers off that Caesar Pyromancer coming back from the graveyard. See how we want to go
Exactly.
about it.
I think the priority for AFX is to keep the Terminate in hand. You want to keep it in hand at all costs because the way Otherwise, you open yourself to losing not only to Expressive Iteration, but also to Murktide Regent, possibly, which would be a strong blocker and a good attacker. So yeah, we
We're
might
gonna
see a Feign Death here.
yeah.
A
Feign Death
cheap
comes
way
back.
to redraw a bunch
And
of cards. I assume we see Seasoned Pyromancer Takenuma discarded.
it's just adding to the board, right? The idea there behind that block is we wanted to get creatures off the battlefield. We kind of did the exact opposite and added more to the battlefield, more power, not what we need, especially when we're set at 7 life. Dragon Rage Channel off the top, that would be a good blocker if it was managed to stick around, but I don't think it will be in the face of 2 Terminates. And yep, we're going to be scooping that one up. AFX is going to take that one down. So let's see if we can have a look at the Murktide sideboard. Let's get that one up and see how they could be sideboarding here to try and shore this one. A lot of one-ofs is open deck list. Both players know what they're playing against. They know the full 75. They just obviously do not know how they're going to be sideboarding. What do you like bringing in here?
2 copies of Unlicensed Hair certainly is gonna come in. It does shut down all of the Undying Malice effects. So it prevents that aspect of the deck from shining while also being helpful against Seasoned Pyromancer, uh, flashback ability from the graveyard, and potentially Croxa. While I definitely am also a big fan of Subtlety and Fury in this matchup. And you could think, huh, that's a bit weird because those are pitch cards, right? You won't need to spend 2 cards to interact in a matchup like this. But the reason why I like them is actually because I believe the hardcast mode on them is pretty valuable in the matchup, and they're pretty nice top decks and pretty nice 2-for-1s for 4 or 5 mana respectively. So I would expect to see more of them. You probably don't want to be playing situational cards where bad top decks like Spell Pierce is not particularly shining. It is a question as to how many Ragavans would you want to leave in your deck against Rakdos, given the presence of Seasoned Pyromancer can really mess that little monkey up.
You mean the best one drop in Magic, not Gathering, in Modern? I almost said Magic the Gathering, but I know people come at me with that one. But, it's got my vote for having the number one drop in Modern. Do you like anything like, where was I was just looking at it? Dress Down. Do you think this is a dress down matchup, or is it going to be too slow?
It's interesting, but it's also pretty situational, and it's not always gonna line up correctly. It actually doesn't line up too great if your opponent tries to evoke their elementals, because they will get to keep the elemental in play. Dress down will prevent the sacrifice trigger from happening. So more so looking towards the grindy cards. The Hearses, the evoke elementals themselves. Seasoned Pyromancer is looking good to me. Abrade for potentially opposing Hearses. Let's check. AFX, yeah, also sporting 2 copies of Unlicensed Hair, so you could answer that with your Abrade.
Well, the big question is Spell Snare. Are we keeping it in, or are we taking it out?
It's probably fine. I think I would lean towards keeping it in. It is a great way to protect your Murktide Regent from Terminate, and so it does seem like it should line up pretty often.
If I look at the deck list in the 75, there are 10 targets that are 2 mana cost or not. All right, looks like players have finished sideboarding, so we're going to go back down to the match. Obviously, AFK managed to take down game number 1, our Scam player. Upper game, are they going to be able to advance themselves to the semi-finals? Let's see. Looks like they've taken a mulligan down to 6. We're going to start off with a bauble. Okay, they're balling themselves. People maybe just tune in, maybe new at Modern, maybe the first time picking up a deck that has bauble and fetch lands in it. Talk me through that interaction. Why did we bauble ourselves then?
So you see that Marcus had a Spybluff canal, but also a fetch land, right? So you can bobble yourself, see the top card, decide whether you like it, and then you can either shuffle the way or keep it on top and draw it, depending on the land you're gonna play for the turn. So it's used in that manner as a way to fix your draw steps a little bit.
Exactly that. We decided, obviously, we wanted to keep the Ledger Shredder because we did start off with that Spyroth Canal. We've drawn it, but we've got a lot of 2-drops in our hand. Do we want to deploy them, or do you think we were going to be holding up the counter spell here, or potentially dress down, as it looks like at least one of them has stayed in the main deck?
The play I could also see happening here is dashing Ragavan. That way you get to collect a treasure, uh, build mana so that next turn you can play Ledger Shredder and keep up a counter spell. But seems like AFX, O'Danielakos went with the play of just developing the Ledger Shredder, which makes sense.
Oh, it's going to pay off for them because if we look at the other side of the battlefield, they've only got 3 and 4 drops in hand. No way to get that grief evoked out early, as we're going to see Ledger Shredder come across. And now we get to keep up things like the Dress Down, like the counter spell, as well as deploying Ragavan if we choose to go that route. And it looks like we do.
Yeah, it did work out beautifully for O'Danielakos now, keeping up a counter spell while having 2 creatures on the battlefield. So pretty nice pressure. Basically,
Terminate.
being able to just counterspell any play that your opponent makes. Because O'Danielakos, sees what happens, right? AFX did not play card on turn 2, did not play a removal spell, did not play anything proactive. So clearly the hand is full of more expensive options.
I was going to go on to this. I was like, how much do you value these cards in your hand? Do we get rid of the Terminate for the grief, then try and, clear the path for either a Fable or Seasoned Pyromancer to come down? Or do we just, you value that Terminate too much? It looks like AFK decided to go with the grief, and Dress Down is going to stop it in response. The counter spell is going to be drawn off that Dress Down. But as you said, Grief gets to stick on the battlefield. We get to go get our third land drop and potentially play this Fable, the Mirror Breaker card that some people say might only be in certain formats after tomorrow. We'll see what comes from Wizards. But right now it is legal in Modern and it is on the battlefield, bringing along with it a Goblin Shaman token. 4th land drop for the turn, giving us the ability to hold up double counter spell.
Yeah, it's kind of spiraled downwards. It was a pretty good turn for AFX. The Grief lined up pretty decently against Dress Down. As I've noted, the Dress Down interaction not always perfect, leaving out the elemental in play while it's been just pitched for 0 mana. It's a pretty big downside. So now the situation looks much less attractive for Old Danielakos, keeping up 2 counter spells, but the Fable of the Mirror Breaker is just happening, right? The value is gonna be produced.
We've decided that we want to keep both these Season Pyros in hand as well as the Bloodstained Maya and not ditch any of them to this Fable. I think that we're going to see both of them end up eating counter spells up at some point. As we do here, counter spell is going to get rid of the first Season Pyro.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like attacking here? Just make yourself a treasure token. There's not really too much of a downside to it, right?
Certainly, there is not much of a downside. So seems
Well,
like seems like AFX was scared maybe of a consider or some card of that type.
oof,
We could have
unlicensed
we could
Hearst off
have
the top.
played around that fear a little bit by maybe attacking with the Goblin Shaman first, but once you're already led on Season Pyromancer, it makes sense not to attack.
Yeah, and obviously we've got counter spell for the Season Pyro. Season Pyros good in their own, unique way when they hit the battlefield, but also once from the graveyard, you can pay 5 mana, exile them, and get 2 1/1 elementals. Not when the license Hearst is down. We can obviously start eating away that graveyard now, almost turning off these feigned death effects, and we're going to move back to their turn. Fable's going to flip. We're going to get the Kiki Cheeky Mirror Breaker side from it. Counter spell still held up. It's kind of everything's kind of going super well here, right? For the Murktide plan, we get to counter this, untap, play our own Season Pyro.
Yeah, it worked out pretty great for all Danielakos in the end. There is still both the Goblin Shaman and Reflection in play, so that is slightly
Mhm.
worrisome, but nothing to copy that's relevant yet.
Well,
So we'll see.
we can play a Dragon Rage Chandler for the turn as well as the Season Pyro, get our Ledger Shredder trigger, and we've got an unlicensed Hearst on activated. This is going to be an uphill battle for AFK. Not like, this is nothing that a Fury or something like that could get them back into the game. Nevertheless, make sure you stick around. We're going to get 2 fresh cards off this Season Pyro entering the battlefield. Oh, it looks like we did bring in the second Dress Down. That's what gets connived with the Ledger Shredder trigger. Putting the extra counter on it, you'll notice it is now a 2/4. And drawing
Makes
Lightning
sense.
Bolt
Yeah.
Murktide. That's 2 pretty good cards to draw.
We see a sorcerer speed activation of the unlicensed heiress that is to play around Seasoned Pyromancer, bringing itself back from the graveyard. Once again, makes sense. What AFX really wants to top deck right now is a Grief or a Fury. Those would be excellent with the Reflection active. Instead, we get a Swamp, so that's
Not ideal. Not
quite
exactly what we're
not
going with.
quite there.
And I don't want to call it early, but I'm pretty sure this is it's running away from AFX right now. This is going to be pretty close to game unless they can get a Fury on the next turn, have it resolve and like copy it of a Kiki Jiki effect. But then we know that there's a lightning bolt, so that can't happen. It's just a case of closing this game down, not giving them the most amount of draws possible. See how we want to go about it. We're going to start off with a lightning bolt, get our trigger. We're not doing this in the upkeep to try and manipulate our draw steps. Sometimes you do see that from these blue, white, red decks, because Dragon Age Chandler does a lot on this card, right? It's not just a 1/1 for one red. It can grow to be a 3/3 if we have Delirium. And then on top of that, every time you cast a sorcery instant speed, you do get to surveil one, so potentially filling your graveyard up quicker and manipulating the top of your deck. Really helps when you start getting into these top deck battles.
Mm-hmm. Here,
How big
the
are we making
lightning
this
bolt
Murktide?
also enabled the Connive on Ledger Shredder, which is also gonna be pretty nice, and we probably make the Murktide region as big as we can, while still preserving Delirium for Dragon Rage's Channeler. So yeah, Odd Lacos was able to leave enchantment, land,
Oh my
creature,
word.
artifacts. So just exiled all of the spells, making it a 6/6 threat.
I wonder if you like crewing the hearse there as well and getting in with that. I think you had the
No,
option
that's
to.
that's not really good because AFX created an extra copy of the Goblin Shaman
Oh,
token
they
with
just chump with
weapon.
that.
So it's a free block, right? Because
But
it's gonna.
it was too much for them to handle. We will be going to a game 3. Remember, this is the quarter finals. These players are playing, so who can get into the semis, who can win a little bit more money this weekend. Everybody in this top 8 is a Mana Trader subscriber, so we'll be getting that 10 times bonus on all the prize money that they get to win. So, if you want to be playing these, make sure you sign up, win yourself a bit extra money, especially if you manage to do well in one of these tournaments. Looking at this sideboard, Canister, what do you think we should be bringing in or has been brought in? We saw the unlicensed hearses there. Do
We've
you like
seen
shield
the
dreads, things
Fable
like
of the
this?
Mirror
Or
Breaker coming
oh
in.
yeah,
We've
with the
seen the
fables in.
Fable coming in. Yeah. Uh, you could use Colagan's command as a way to answer a licensed hairs, especially after you've seen it from old Anilagos. You could use your own hairs to try to control Delirium and Murktide regions. So those are the options that
Well,
might
let's have a little
come.
look at these opening hands. Looks like we've got 2 land, Lightning Bolt, Ragavan, Fable, Season Pyromancer, and Terminate at the top of your screen. And on the bottom, we've got 3 land, Archmage's Charm, only a 1 of, a Braid, Lightning Bolt, and Holy Heat, and Dress Down is drawn for the turn. We're going to start off with this Ragavan, and we just say, get that out of here. We don't want that one. That one's too powerful. It's going to eat this Lightning Bolt from the hand. Now we don't really have much to do on this turn 2, right? We're just only holding up the Terminate, potentially hoping something like a Ledger Shredder or something we can kill with it comes down. We don't want to see them leave 2 blue mana up, so we get
Exactly.
we've got the option.
Notably, the Unholy hit the Ragavan at sorcery speed to probably to play around Undying Malice effects. You don't want the Ragavan to come back. You'd rather just get rid of it.
And how do you choose what free drop you want to cast here? Like, do you think, okay, there's 2 blue mana there, potentially counter spell. Which one of these do I not mind getting counter spell? Do you just go, I'm just going to go my best one? If they've got it, cool. It is what it is.
And then the natural way in which Fable of the Mirror and Seasoned Pyromancer work is that Seasoned Pyromancer gets better once your hand gets smaller. Ideally, you cast it as your last card and then just draw 2. Then it's just a draw 2. If you cast it with cards still in hand, it fixes your hand a little bit, but it's much less impressive. So it does make sense to lead on Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and also coincidentally that matches up much better against Dress Down. So that is nice too.
Yeah, much nicer. As I say, the Goblin Shaman token is created. Not seeing a counter spell there has got to feel pretty good. And already the card advantage is happening with Fable the Mirror Breaker already eating a card from the other side of the battlefield. A Lightning Bolt is going to get that out of here. We're going to pass the turn, play a land, and then pass it straight back as we see it go up to chapter number 2. We have the option to discard up to 2 cards and redraw that many cards if we want. We'll see how AFX wants to go about that. It looks like we ditched a Fury and maybe
And
the
Undying
Undying Malice.
Yeah, it makes sense to get rid of this too. You don't really want to evoke a Fury into open mana, risk getting counter spelled like that. You'd rather just see some fresh cards, and you still have the Seasoned Pyromancer and plenty of removal in your hand, so you can afford to play a bit slower.
Well, an Unlicensed Hearst and a Blackleaf Cliff are the 2 cards that are redrawn. We are gonna play this Hearst, and it is gonna resolve. We did have the option to Archmage's Charm counter it if we wanted to go that route, but our graveyard's not really, it's not big enough for them. It's not really doing much. We don't really have Delirium cards in our hand, so we're letting that one resolve. Plus, we do have an answer for it if we need to in braid.
Exactly. You probably are happier turning Archmage's Charm into 2 cards rather than trading just 1 for 1. So I'll be happier with drawing 2 with Archmage's Charm and upgrading the Unlicensed Heirs on my own turn if I feel like there is a need for that.
Do you like going Archmage's Charm end of turn here, or do you think you braid it first because then you can keep land in the graveyard as a creature type?
I mean, I would just try to be mana efficient for the most part, I think, but
Oh, this is probably going to answer the
Yes,
question.
there is arguments for both, but the mana efficient play would be to fetch and Archmage's Charm, draw 2, and go from there. Idly find maybe an iteration or some other nice card, some other grindy card like a Fury or Subtlety. Okay,
How
we'll see.
about a Ledger Shredder and Explicit Federation
That's good. That's good.
into a Dragon Rage channel? That's 3 really good spells off the top of our deck there. We still, going into turn 4, we've got our land in hand if we need to go, double spell this turn. Potentially, we want to turn the Ledger Shredder on.
Mm-hmm.
What's coming to your mind here? Do you think we want to go Dragon Rage Channeler into iteration? But same when we play the land this turn, I'm guessing that's not the route we want to take. Do you use the Abrade now and fire it off so our graveyard starts filling up, or do we let them untap with that? We've got a Fable flipping next turn. They still got 4 cards in hand. Like what's going through your mind here? What sort of lines do you think should be taken?
The mana efficient plays would be to probably play Ledger Shredder and upgrade the Unlicensed Heirs, although you might also. It's not like super clear if you want to get rid of the Unlicensed Heirs either, because it's okay, it's not like the most perfect, but once again, Danielakos chooses to play in a way that is gonna actually preserve the Ledger Shredder, which otherwise would have died to the Lightning Bolt if it just ran into. If Danielakos would just run it out. So actually, pretty perfect way to match the cards. Dress down, being able to stop Seasoned Pyromancer from fixing the hand and leaving AFX with just a bunch of removal spells, and now we can untap and have a good iteration that's
Well, we
likely
need a
gonna
removal
find a
spell here,
removal
right?
spell.
Well,
Yeah.
Unlicensed Hearst is all right, but still no removal spell because obviously next time we can start using this Kiki Jiki effect to copy Season Pyromancer, and if we wanted to turn through our deck a little bit quicker. See how they want to
Yeah.
move about it? They've got a lot of land in hand, a lot of spells. Probably one of the most powerful ones being Iteration.
We could go Ledger Shredder into iteration to get an extra connive, or we could just start with iteration because you can hit some extra cards that you might still want to cast this turn. We see Unholy Heat found. Very convenient.
Unholy
Uh,
and Mistress Bauble. So we've got the option to do like Ledger Shredder into Bauble into Heat if we want to go that route. Or we could, there's
exactly,
multiple targets.
exactly.
Let's
We
see how
would
they want to go
skip
about
it.
it.
We would skip the connive this way. We could deploy the unlicensed hairs, since the earlier it shows up, the better for the most part, because you can grow it and then threaten your opponent with crewing it. But we'll see.
And Holy Heat had to be cast this turn. Obviously, that is what went into exile off the iteration. Powerful card gets a look at the top 3. Put 1 into your hand, 1 into exile that you can cast at the end of the turn, and then the other one to the bottom of your library. As we're going
I
to
like
play the
casting the
Hearst.
unlicensed hairs here too, because it's not a creature, so you don't let your opponent, you tap out, but you don't let your opponent play a profitable Fury, which is a card that could be in their hand, and AFX does have 4 lands, so a 5th land would make it so that a Fury is castable. So I like choosing to go Hairs over Iteration, Hairs over Ledger Shredder here, excuse me. Does seem like a good play to me.
You've got a lot of removal spells on one player's hand and a lot of creatures in the other player's hands. You know, if they have the fight that they want here, who's going to come out? I suppose we've got more answers on one side than we do creatures on the other. But this Hurst, we saw it multiple times yesterday. It can get real big every turn if it's just growing by 2 power, 2 power. Even a Ragavan off the top can crew it. Now count a spell off the top.
Yeah, that's just makes you really secure, and it's actually really nice for Oda Nilakos. So we can go for a play like this. Ledger Shredder into Dragon Rage's Channeler, connive away a card, maybe a land, maybe the Mishra's Bubble, and then you get to hold up counterspell while having flying threats in play, which are gonna have 4, maybe even 5 power if you connive the Mishra's Bubble. Yeah, we see the
Yeah.
Mishra's Bubble connived, keeping both Fiery Islet and Otawara because those are not the worst cards you could have in a grindy situation. Fiery Islet cycles, Otawara just a functional bounce spell, so
No, you
makes
called
sense
it.
that we
You said
play.
you said bubble to the graveyard. That is what it is. And obviously, again, just pitting Ledger Shredder out slightly out more reach if a Fury was to come down or something along those lines. Didn't get
Also makes Ledger Shredder invulnerable to lightning bolts, so that's good.
that's pretty key right now, especially with 2 lightning bolts in hand. Terminate is going to be the first spell. Remember, it's targeting the Ledger Shredder because Ledger Shredder will trigger on both players' turns if they cast their second spells. So we do want to get that one out first before we cast the lightning bolt, if that is the route we want to go. We're thinking about this counter spell here, though, right?
Yeah.
That's the route we are going to take with it. We're going to get
Daniel keeps making pretty good calls with the plays that he makes. Certainly choosing to fight over the correct threats and correct forms of interaction. The lightning bolts are not gonna be able to touch the Ledger Shredder anymore, and if a lightning bolt is gonna get cast right now, that would mean that we get a connive, so potentially we grow the Shredder even more.
Well, this is Daniel's 5th tournament mana series this year. And if all those quick people with math out there, this is also the 5th month of the year. So he has played in every single mana traders and he is up there on the leaderboard for the end of the year tournament. But if he does well this weekend and it's going pretty well for him currently, he might be able to get himself that automatic invite to the finals. Remember, $25,000 tournament, 48 player invite only. Murktide region drawn for the turn. Pretty big
Great
one.
draw. Especially after the Terminate has been cast already. That's just so good.
Obviously, we did draw a Dragon Mage channel as well, so we do want to try and keep the Delirium in the graveyard if we can. Not 11 cards in the graveyard. I'm pretty sure we can cast this while keeping Delirium in there. Just how big it's going to be, I'm not entirely sure. We'll see. Because I imagine it's going to get deployed this turn. Is there any reason to hold up the Otawara here with a Caesar Pyromancer? I don't think there is, but you know
You're
better than me.
probably interested in just deploying your threats and attacking your opponent, right?
Can't win the game
AFX
otherwise.
gonna go to 14 live. You can play a Murktide Regent. It does seem like no extra terminates in AFX's hand after the first one got countered. So here is your opening, and you can play your Regent to threaten your opponent. You can also use the unlicensed Hearth tricks to make it even bigger later if you end up with spare instants or sorceries in the graveyard.
Iteration drawn off the connive. We're going to put the Otawara into the graveyard. You know, even this unlicensed Hearse is getting big now. It's a 4/4 currently. The next turn it'll be a 6/6. That's a lot of power on the battlefield,
Yeah,
especially when the
it's
follow-up plays an iteration.
not something you can just ignore. So certainly very strong. AFX probably now wondering if casting a lightning bolt and letting Ledger Shredder connive is a good idea. Seems like that is what AFX decided.
And Lightning Bolt was drawn off it. I think that's the one that's going to go to the graveyard. Yes, it is, because of the iteration. We just know how much of a powerful card that is, especially in these top decking wars. But then so is Seasoned Pyromancer left in hand for AFX. That, again, if any card's going to get
Yeah,
back into it, being able to draw an extra 2 from that could be.
a pyromancer into
Terminate?
a terminate. Yeah, is what we are looking for, I think.
2 more Terminates left in the deck. We're getting... Oh, hold on, we
We
drew a
did add a
Terminate.
terminate. Nice, nice.
Jeez, this is huge. Getting word from our back tables that Living End managed to take out, or managed to secure their win versus. I'm waiting for. Was it Omnath? Was that the? Okay, I think it was the 80 card version Omnath, or the 95 card Omnath got beaten by Living End. So they'll be advancing. Obviously, that is magic of player one. We saw them a lot yesterday. A lot of winning happening for them, and it hasn't stopped here in the top 8 of this Mana Trader series.
Mm-hmm.
Back to this game, though. Both players going back and forth. That Terminate is huge, being able to take out that Murktide, getting off the battlefield. It was a big, I believe it was a 7-power Murktide, but
Yeah,
now we're
yeah,
on.
even more potential with the unlicensed heads, but still there is a 4/6 Ledger Shredder now in play, and an iteration in hand, so it's not gonna be an easy fight from AFX. This Shredder needs to be dealt with. Let me check if there's any fatal pushes in the deck. There's 2 copies of Fatal Push in the main deck of AFX's Rakdos deck, so those can serve as extra answers to the Ledger Shredder if
Okay,
they're
looks like
still in the deck.
so. Mistress Bauble is going to exile. Season Pyromancer is what we're going to get hit in our hand here. That's what's going to get cast. That's going to give us another 2 on. A lot of Season Pyromancer being cast this game, and we're seeing this how strong this card can be, as well as the Connive Trigger from Ledger Shredder, letting us kind of grow it a bit more, making it up to a 5/7 now,
Yeah,
drawing an
just lined up
Unholy
perfectly.
Steamers.
Lined up very well for Danielakos.
I'm now hearing in my ear that Yogmoth managed to defeat that Indomitable Creativity. So I'm kind of happy about that. Keep that one going. Love to see a bit of Yogmoth winning. And in the final one of the quarters is Creativity. Wrong, sorry. What did you say then? Sorry, Adrian? Om Omnath beat Creativity. So that's the 65 card version of Omnath managed to take down Creativity. So no more Creativity left in this tournament. That was the most played deck going into it alongside Rhinos. And now we have 0 Rhinos and 0 Creativity moving into our top 4. Which one of these 2 players is going to join them? Both players just a lot of land in hand.
Well, currently, Danielakos is in a commanding position, and the Ledger Shredder is gonna win the game unless it's gonna get dealt with. So AFX has only 1 extra draw step to do that.
1 draw step. 2 fatal pushes remain if they're in the deck, plus 1 terminate. I doubt something like Engineered Explosives would have come in this matchup. Is there anything crazy that could happen with like a Cruxer, playback Cruxer that potentially could be another 6 points of damage?
Uh,
Not if we block like this, it wouldn't be. So this is 5. This is 7 points coming across, right?
yeah, it's 7 points. This is an interesting attack with the Seasoned Pyromancer, attacking with it because you value the flashback make tokens ability to make yourself a bit
This
better
also
while
would have
trading for something.
give us a lightning bolt outright. Obviously, we have pseudo god mode. We can see each player's hands, but if we don't block here, we drop to 1. On the other side of the battlefield, there's 8 points coming across, which would have left the extra 3, which something like a Croxer or a lightning bolt potentially could have finished them off with. But we decided to block, get ourselves down to 3, play the
What you're
extra
saying
Ledge
is
Shredder.
it's true, but the Ledger Shredder will be able to block, so that is just gonna save some lives. So lightning bolt's not actually an out.
True, true. Let's see. It's going to have to be a big draw step.
See it
Come
yet?
on, come on up there!
The
Don't
mist
hold us
very
all.
fast.
Let's get a drummer ready to go. Have we got another game or not? Ragavan, that's not gonna do it. I don't believe, especially So we block
Well,
there, take 7, drop down to 4. No, I think that's it. I think we are going to be calling this one momentarily, and we're going to see Murktide into the top 4. As we do see that all happens for you. Right, let's head back to the virtual booth. You get to see our beautiful faces one more time. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Will Hall, that is Kanister MTG. We're taking you through 2 more rounds. That's it. We've done the quarters. The quarters. We're going to go start moving to the semis. But first, we're going to need to have a little break, probably only 2 or 3 minutes. So make sure you stick around, and we'll speak to you all really shortly. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mad Trace series. That was a super quick quarterfinals. We're straight into the semis, flying through them today, and we have got a great feature match for you all. Remember, Creativity out now. Both of them lost in the top 8, but congratulations to them. They get to walk away with a whole bunch of points, get themselves into that leaderboard for the end of the year final. Remember, 48 players, 25k cash prize invite only. Kanister, what 2 players and what 2 decks are we going to be seeing in our main feature match?
we're gonna be watching Kukuca on Yogmoth facing off against 5-color Omnath piloted by
This is the 65 color version, right? The Nathan B one.
Nathan B 1992. Exactly. So those 2 players are gonna face off. The Yogmoth version with a pretty funky twist with the Arboreal Grazer,
Yeah.
Golgari Rot Farm, Colony Garden mana base, while Nathan B chose to play 65 card version of Elementals featuring 3 copies of Nissa, Resurgent Animist, Elshnorn, and 2 Maniac Chalice of the Void, which is an interesting
Yes.
choice to make.
Pretty different. Definitely a mess sort of hedge. Maybe they thought they were going to be playing against a lot of Rhino decks. Obviously, it was the most played deck equal to Creativity this weekend, so it might have been done super well, as well as a few living end floating around, and one of them still is in the top 4. I think the match has started, so we're going to try and shoot straight down to that, so we don't try and miss as much action as we possibly can for you beautiful people at home. And here we are going to be looking at the opening games.
All right, so we see Kukuza with Yogmoth on the play. Traditionally, the 4-color elementals decks are not a good matchup for Yogmoth. There is a lot of removal that can deal with your creatures, and it's kind of hard to stick your resources so you can play a favorable Yogmoth that's going to be able to produce resources. Although, interestingly, the Arborea Grazer Rod Farm setup seems to be significantly less weak to Fury, so that's going to be helpful.
This still but obviously I've been on the side of both. I've played both these decks quite a lot. I enjoyed both of them. Definitely preferred the Yorion version back when that was legal. But since then I've become playing a lot more Yawgmoth. And Yawgmoth's like key strength is that it's very bad at 1-for-1 removal, unless that removal is exile effects. And Solitude is an absolute nightmare for the deck to kind of deal with, because they can exile something like we're about to see now, probably a Strangleroot Geist. But on the flip side of that, it's kind of Renin 6 isn't going to do too much on this board right now because we're trying to train this new a bundle grazer type effect. But things like Leyline's Binding and Solitudes, these are not cards you want to be seeing as a Yawgmoth player.
Yeah, it's not great that all of the removal is exiling. Although if you get to deploy a Yogmoth with a plant token and an Arboreal Glacier still in play, then you do get to take advantage of the sacrificing ability and just reload your hand, which can be very helpful.
So, and this is one of the strengths of Yawgmoth. Right? At the minute, it just looks like they've got a load of dawdly walls on the battlefield. But with a calling in hand, we could get a grist end of turn potentially, because we can make 1 mana off the walls as well as tapping the walls to get extra mana. So we can go grist for free, or next time we can try and just cord straight out for 4 and get ourselves a Yawgmoth. Start refilling our hand
Yeah,
that way.
I'm
And that's
interested in the
turn.
Yogmoth line. Also, pretty cool to see that we see Nathan with a Renin 6 ready to cast this turn, but uh, Kukuza's board just is kind of resistant to that. Sure, you can ping the plant token, but that's probably not what you want to do. So
It's almost what you want. Or we're just going to play Chalice for 1. I'm just gonna have a little look at the deck list a minute and see like what that turns off. Because remember, this isn't the this is open deck list. The players know what they're playing against. They know the full 75 of this Yawgmoth, and there's still quite a lot of 1-drops in the main. So 9 1-drops in the main. So we are turning things off like Young Wolf, Ignoble Hurricane, Future Grazers, but Quarter Calling can get him, and obviously just straight on time we do draw a Ignoble Hierarch off the top. But here comes a cord for 4 by the looks of it. Yep, cord for 4. We're going to go and get ourselves a Yawgmoth. Potentially start refilling our hand, but then we can only really cast a 1-drop, and there's no point casting a 1-drop into the Chalice on 1. And this is where
yeah,
it kind of gets a bit dicey.
Salted can exile Yawgmoth, but you can just draw so many cards in response. Though still, with Strangleroot Geist, you can sacrifice it, then it's gonna come back. Then you can sacrifice your other creatures, put the -1/-1 counter on Strangleroot Geist again to sacrifice it once again. So effectively, every creature you control can be 2 cards drawn, which is actually a lot. You're not forced to go for that immediately, as you said, but the option is there, and as soon as Nathan tries to interact with Yawgmoth, that's probably gonna happen.
Okay, this is
So
interesting.
that's a heads up play, yeah.
So I would have done something slightly different here if I was over on the Yawgmoth side. Like, there's no real reason to be doing this in our main phase, right? I'm looking at the side where there's no counter spells and they've got full access to their deck list. No matter what they do, if they react, if they like Leyline's Binding or something in their turn, then I can call it in response, and then that turns off the Solitudes. No, it doesn't turn off. Sorry, something in a force against it. But this way, there might potentially be a target on the battlefield for me to sack my creatures to try and draw cards that way. But instead, we went for the other option of getting rid of the Undying Creature, which potentially could be a bunch of cards just in itself, sacrificing it, sack another creature, put a counter on it, negate the counter that's on it, draw against it. It's like 3 or 4 cards. So again, quite a heads up play.
Yeah, it makes sense given the Chalice of the Void in play too, right? You know that Young Wolf is not really an option, so you're not afraid that that's gonna happen. So there is just a limited amount of other undying creatures that Kukuza has access to. So it actually seemed like a pretty reasonable way to go with things. Now the Yawgmoth has been dealt with. by pitching yet another Solitude, bringing Nathan's hand size to just pretty small, no
Just a Ren.
spells, just a Ren and Lens.
Could, if we want to use the, this Passageau we have in hand and get rid of this Chalice, if we really think, it on one is going to affect us too much. Choose not to go that route because we did draw a Yogmoth for the turn as well as a Quarter Calling, so that's a good draw for them.
Mm-hmm.
Here
That's
comes
really good, yeah.
Yogmoth. Okay, there is an
Card
interaction
of
on.
Calling will be able to use the walls and get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to a free drop
Yeah.
on Nathan's turn. That's pretty nice.
Well, if we all still got a land to play, like we could play this Passageau and get it on 4, but realistically, there's no other 4 drops we want to get from our from our library. It's already in place. So keeping Passageau in hand here for maybe potentially the last Chalice that's in the main. Just seeing if there's any fables or anything like that. No, it doesn't have too many targets unless we want to kind of fire it off and hit a triome or something like that. But it doesn't line up too well when there's a Ren 6 on the battlefield. Big draw step. Another land. Not ideal.
Yeah, every time you draw a land with Ren 6 already in play, you do feel like you kind of got dropped out of adjusted, but it does happen and it will happen a portion of the time.
So I think we will see a grist found at the end of turn with this chord. Notably on MTGO, it is bugged. Chord of Calling and Wall of Roots. If you've got one counter, 4/0/4 counters on it, you can't actually tap it and then remove a counter. MTGO doesn't allow that. Found that one out the hard way, didn't I? That was a treat. Is this for two?
Yeah, just going for a Stranglehold, guys. It makes sense, right? The Undying
Refill
creature
your
is just
hand.
really good here. Yeah. Also, thankfully, didn't need to do the Wall of Roots trick in this game whatsoever. So
Can we win? So if we go Passageau, the Chalice, play the Young Wolf, go back and forth drawing. We've got multiple draws here of being able to hit another Quarter Calling. Obviously, there's 2 in the graveyard. We need a Quarter Calling or or an Evolution will do it, I think. I think we've got an option, enough of an option that I would go for it this turn. Tapping the Yogmoth might stop that because obviously I'm thinking of a chord route here. You get something like 19 draws towards a Quarter Calling with the 44 cards in your deck.
I think Kubuza is just Kukuza is just a little bit less of a rush than that. It's also not seemingly not interested.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Big brain.
Okay.
I
We're
love
not
it.
besieging the challenge. It's actually pretty nice because it does cut off some of the draws in Nathan's deck now.
That's
Let me
actually
check exactly. How many 2-drops do we have? Yeah, 2 Eladrami Skull doesn't work anymore.
we're
3
literally Quarter Calling.
Rentex.
Oh, we're just scooping up straight away. Okay. There's high odds there. There's probably like 45-ish% that they hit a Quarter Calling. On the other side of it is if they draw the Blood Artist there, it's like a really weird interaction to try and get it back in your deck and keep going off that way. But they decided to scoop it up because there's going to be a hand completely refilled in the face of a Ren 6 and just lands. So we will be getting the game 2 with the.
Exactly. I think the broader point with that concession was that Nathan just realized that Kukutsu is able to draw 20 cards and 4-color of grindy Omnath deck with literally no spells in play, no spells in hand is not going to be able to defeat 20 cards drawn. So that
Wow.
prompted the concession.
Looking at this sideboard, is there anything you want to be bringing in here? Any key cards that are screaming at you?
Let me think for a moment. We see Unmoored Ego, which is a card that you could use to extract the namesake card Yogmoth from the Yogmoth deck, which will lessen Yogmoth's power level. Besides that, most of the anti-Yogmoth tools are already there, right? You could maybe bring your dress downs. They have their moments, but you're probably just gonna be interested in maybe removing those chalices and bringing in Unmoored Ego and
Endurance as well
using,
stops the combo.
yeah, a dress down or an endurance as your last few slots.
Furies and lightning bolts, like Furies with endurances are the worst nightmare for Yogmoth. You know what I mean? You're able to kill their board. At this point, they've all probably one toughness. You get to kill 3 or 4 creatures, and then while they've got all the undying triggers on the stack, you pass endurance and shuffle them all back in someone's deck. It's rough. It's a real rough beat, and that's happened to me a few times while piloting that deck. Not as you
It,
said, I'm not too
it's
big on the
rough, but
chalices.
as you see, this version of Yogmoth is slightly different with arboreal grazers, such as the Fury. Fury is never gonna be able to kill as many creatures as it is traditionally able to. There's not gonna be the mana dork draws where we can sweep multiple mana dorks and really punish a person. So
All
still,
right, well,
you can go for that 4-card combo of endurance and fury against the undying creatures. That is true.
let's see if they can level it up. I did say being Yawgmoth, you did not want to see all these exile effects, but we did fire them off quite quickly. You know what I mean? There is a downside to being able to evoke these elemental creatures, as it normally ends in a 2-for-1. We're going to see that it looks like Haywire Might came in. Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
hedge towards something like a Chalice or a Leyline's Binding. But obviously, if you look at that hand, it just doesn't look super powerful, right? But that's as soon as something like a Court of Calling is drawn, just unlocks everything. Where on the other side, a couple of lands, Leyland's Binding, Dress Down, Nissa, Teferi, and an Omnath.
Yeah, Nathan's hand is one that just would kill for a red and 6 in it.
Oh yeah,
Unfortunately, not there. Well, Kukutsu is well keeping a hand that's not particularly exciting and certainly reliant on top decking a payoff cards sooner rather than later, but it's not too bad. It can develop early.
Bundle Grazer will actually help with that game. That's 2 land drops in 1 turn. See what we draw for the.
Nice.
It's
Simple.
easy. It's easy when you get them all. It's exactly how you rate up. So potentially, even with that Court of Calling, we could be casting it as early as next turn, even for
Yeah,
one of
Arboreal
just.
Grazer and Calling Garden just really doing a great job at enabling Court of Calling, honestly. You get an extra land and you've got 2 creatures that are free to tap for mana. That's just so much material to tap for your Convoke.
So Leyline's Binding, the only interaction we really have besides this Dress Down. Thoughtseize is the card drawn for the turn.
Hmm?
We're going to play the Twilight Mire here. Play the Wall. Wall of Roots, obviously quite a unique effect. A lot of times we see -X counters go on things. This is a 0/-1 counter that goes on them. And you can hit that counter on and add yourself 1 green mana. Any time as well. It could be your turn or your opponent's turn.
Yeah, it's effectively a Soul Ring.
Okay, and the endurance, wrong. The dress down here is going to stop the wall from being able to make mana once it enters the battlefield, which is going to turn off us the ability to use this Twilight Mire. So potentially, maybe we're meant to, float our mana before we play in this card, because at least worst case scenario, we could always use the 1 black floating to cast a Thoughtseize, but instead we're going to have to cast this Haywire Might if we want to go that route. Looks like we
Yeah, you
do.
can't float anymore. Can't use black. The Thoughtseize is not castable yet, but it's not too big of a deal. I think it should be manageable. Next turn we can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chord with X2. Probably not particularly interested in that. So probably gonna wait till next turn, then Thoughtseize into Young Wolf chord for Yogmoth, as that should be an option.
Yeah, just looking if there's any good 2 drops that we can go get. No, nothing that's really sticking out. I think we would go for a 3 or 4 if we can get there. Lightning Bolt, good draw, but I don't think we have a mountain. I think that's the only color mana we are missing currently.
There's
And
a Stomping Ground
we
in
got
hand,
something ground
so
in hand. Sorry, I was looking at the battlefield like a numpty.
yeah,
But how
that's available, but
Lightning
not
Bolt,
sure
Leyline
what's the best
Binding?
play. Yeah, you could do that, but like you probably would like to bolt the Haywire Might to prevent Leyline Binding from trading for Haywire Might. Then you have the Binding ready to trade with for the best card that your opponent has. The thing is that like they all pretty bad right now. Like the second best card is Wall of
Yeah,
Roots.
and that's what makes it so awkward to play against this deck, because even next turn we can see that there's a Thoughtseize in hand. So if we're holding up the Leyline's Binding and they get Thoughtseized, okay, well I guess I'm gonna have to do it on the wall, and then as the wall's targeted, you can use Encord. But instead, we're going to go with a Teferi, Time Raveler,
Yeah,
the powerful
it
3 drop.
seems unexcusable to me not to play 3-drop here. Keeping the removal up is just way too bad, and you cannot afford to do that in Nathan's position, I believe. So playing it Fairy makes sense. We can see a bounce on Haywire Might to just stick the Fairy so it's on the battlefield. We can bounce the wall, which is the highest mana, let's say, mana denial play. But it does leave the Fairy dead to Haywire Might, or you can blast the Fairy and bounce something on the future turn when it might actually be more useful to bounce a card.
This is an interesting turn. So basically, Young Wolf is going to be net 0 if we go for a chord route. We are going to play the Young Wolf first into removing a counter from the Wall of Roots. We're going to float double black, start lead off with this 4 Cs. We obviously see the double Nissa Leyline's binding a lightning bolt. We're going to take the Leyline's binding here, even though there's a Haywire Might on the battlefield. And then we're going to finish off with a chord. A pretty strong turn. Chord for 4, getting Yogmoth.
And we can convert the Grazer and the plant token into 2 cards effectively, so that seems like a good plan. Develop a little bit more Root guys, not a bad draw for the future upcoming turns.
And we've still got a land drop for the turn, right? Or
I believe so, yeah. Should be turn 4 right now.
And that gives us a green mana if we need to use the Haywire Might. Or double green for some reason, maybe for like a Beseiju as a Windswept Heath is drawn for the turn. So it's going to give us our 4 drops. We could potentially go Nissa into this Windswept Heath.
Playing this as dangerous, but I guess might as well. It's dangerous in the sense that I guess she can get killed by Yogmoth, but I mean, it's not a huge danger.
Well, would we use the Teferi here first and bounce the Yogmoth before doing this?
That's a possible line of play, yeah. Seems like Kukutsu not interested in interacting with Nissa so far, just letting the trigger happen, but response to the fetch land makes sense.
So we're going to sack the Burrow Grazer, put a -1/-1 counter on the Young Wolf. So if people don't understand how this sort of interaction works, they just see +1/+1 counters and -1/-1 counters floating thrown around. Do you want to talk people through how that works and why it's so key in this Yawgmoth deck?
Yeah, the rules say that every time state-based actions are checked, +1/+1 and -1/-1 counters cancel out at the rate of 1 per 1 each. So if you put a -1/-1 counter on your Young Wolf, which has a +1/+1 counter on it, then it just removes the +1/+1 counter. And Undying, as the ability says that once the creature dies, it comes back with a +1/+1 counter unless it already had one on itself. And that way you can just return your Young Wolves or Strangleroot Geists a lot of times. In fact, if you've got 2 of them on the battlefield, the only limiting factor is your life total, and you can repeat that ad nauseum effectively otherwise.
Okay, so land does now enter the battlefield. We are going to bounce with this Teferi, the Yawgmoth back to hand. It's going to draw us an Adomi's Calling, and we've still got 1 red mana floating, and that is going to finish off this Young Wolf, because remember, it did have the +1/+ counter already on it. So it will go to the graveyard, no undying effects there. And the problem here, Yawgmoth's now going to untap with 11 cards in their hand. So the
So many
upside,
cards.
the upside of Yawgmoth here, right? Like, no, yeah, okay, you've killed my whole board, but I've actually drawn so many more cards. I've restocked my hand. The card advantage is firmly in their favor. How are we going to go about deploying all this? We can see a bundle of Gravers, Wall of Roots. We've even got a Strangleroot Geist if you want to take out that Teferi this turn.
Seems like not interested. Instead, deploying Yogmoth maybe. We see 2 black mana floated.
Is
Fetching a
interesting.
forest.
So we're going to start off
Thoughtseize.
with Thoughtseize. I'm pretty sure the Calling is what we're going to be taking here, right? That can turn itself into potentially
Yeah,
an Omnath
Nissa doesn't look
Solitude.
Nissa doesn't look so good, I guess, without a fetch land, and can probably leave her be, let her be. Alright, so the Geist gets played with a black mana floating.
So yeah, I'm not so sure why we floated the double black there. I think we could have had a turn where we got the greys on the battlefield as well as one of these
Yeah,
gardens. But
we could play a grazer and a garden, seems like, but
here we are. This is what happens. We do get
Twilight might produce double black, and it was too late at that point.
Prismatic Ending is the draw. That's a good answer to Stronger Root Geist. Another exile effect that we see in these 4-color Omnath decks. But we are just going to pass the turn back into, again, another 8 cards in hand. Stronger Root off the top. We're going to play that one. That is the 2/1 Haster with Undying into Yogmoth. And just this board now in itself is pretty scary. A chord for 1, and it could just be potentially game over. But we're going to try and get the big beats in here, I think. Drawing another land. Going to play that one for the turn. Probably go get ourselves... Have we got another forest to go fetch?
Let me check this.
No, only 3 forests. Only 3 forests in this list. So we're going to have to shock that in if we wanted to play the grazer from hand. We choose against it. So we're just going to get in there for 3 points of damage. We're not out of this matchup yet, but, you know, advantage bar, I would say, is towards the Yogmoth players' side, especially, well, saying that fetch land's pretty good in the face of a Nissa, gives us some triggers.
We're gonna guarantee drawing a spell, an elemental. If that's gonna happen, and I believe that Nissa cannot be destroyed by just 2 creatures. Yeah, so Nissa is safe. I guess, well, not much else to do.
Exactly. It's one of those, it's all I've got. Play to your outs.
Yeah.
They're at 6 life. There's no lightning bolts or anything crazy like that in there. There are 2 lightning bolts. What other reach have we got? Red and 6 pings. Anything in the sideboard? Nope, nothing too crazy. So nothing a Fury won't be able to get us out of, but it is going to be an uphill battle. Here comes the Misty for the turn.
4 mana with 2 LEDs and 2 mana producing triggers from Nissa. So it would be pretty comfortable, pretty nice for Nathan if Nissa reveals an Omnath right now. It's gonna be immediately castable and impactful. So we're probably gonna see a red mana added to make sure that is an option.
Oh my word! They hit
and
it.
They
hit it off the top. All 4 mana floating, big hedge play. Play to your outs, ladies and gentlemen. We managed to cast the Omnath, had the right mana floating, and that in itself is going to draw us a card. That's a Prismatic Ending, another exile effect, which is going to be lined up pretty well against these Undying creatures. But the game could just be over this turn, especially if a Grist is then drawn. Great card in this matchup. You can use that as a kill spell if needed to get this Omnath off the battlefield.
Also, importantly, what could happen is just the Eldritch Evolution fetching Blood Artisan and winning the game. So that's also a simpler approach.
So the combo here is obviously we spoke about the Undying. We just moved that +1/+1 counter back and forth between the Strangleroot Geists here. But every time we now do this, we will be losing 1 life but gaining 1 life. But every trigger, our opponent will lose a life. So that is going to be game, and Yogmoth is going to advance into the finals of this weekend. Adrian, do we have our backup feature match, or are they still playing? Okay, we're going to move back to us in the booth while we go and set up our backup feature match. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, if you just joined. We've had 139 players this weekend, all battling out, playing the best format in Magic, Modern, and we have limited it down to just 3 players remain. 2 more are battling out. We'll see if we can jump into them. We've been doing it all weekend. My name is Will Hall. That's Kanister MTG, and it looks like we've queued up, and we're going to move straight down to it. Good job, Adrian. It is, of course, a Murktide versus Living End. We're going to get confirmation on who's a game up, if anybody. Daniel is a game up, so we've got the Murktide is 1 up versus the Living End player. Well,
up the game and up the match. Seems like pretty quick.
Up a game, up a match. So we will see a Yogmoth versus a blue-red Murktide final. So you've just seen our faces. Here it is again, but we're going to have a real short break. We're flying through this top 8 currently, so stay tuned for the finals, and we'll be here in momentarily. See you all soon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mana Trader Series Finals. 139 players. We've whittled it down to the final two, and congratulations to them both, because no matter who comes first or second, they have both got invites to the end of year tournament. 25k invite only tournament, 48 players. Everyone's battling out in these series to try and get to them. Remember, how do they qualify for that? Well, there's a Swiss rounds that they have to qualify for. There's a leaderboard. Come top two of that. Easy. You get to not only play this weekend, if you come top two, you automatically get invites. Then this weekend, they've been battling it out to see who will be the number one, number two. We now know who that is going to be, and they have invites as well. But good job to people in third to eighth place. They're going to get themselves a bunch of points, and those bunch of points towards the end of the season, there is another second leaderboard that if you can be on top of that in the top eight, you'll be filling the last 8 slots. But Kanister, which two players are we going to see, and what two decks are they piloting in this final?
Two players which have been featured heavily both yesterday and today. Danielakos and his trusty choice of Izzet Murktide,
Absolutely
facing
killing
off
it all
against
weekend.
Kukuza, playing the Yogmoth Arboreal Grazer version of the deck.
I'm not saying I have a favorite, but I am happy that Yogmoth is in the final. Let's put it that way. Traditionally, how do you think this matchup kind of stacks up for both these players? Do you have a thing, one that's favored?
I think traditionally it's been pretty close. I've heard many conflicting reports, so that typically points towards the fact that the matchup is pretty close, skill intensive, and requires knowledge of how to play and how to sideboard. That said, I believe Kukuza's version should be better suited at handling Ragavan and other cards like this, like point removal from Murktide. Like the Arboreal Grazers, they look just straight up good as long as they function. Of course, this deck being a 23 land deck with the extra help of Golgari Rot Farms nonetheless, but still a 23 land deck might be a little bit inconsistent at using the Grazers to their full extent. But if they do line up correctly, then they're going to be excellent in the matchup, I believe. So
let's see if we can get that deck list up on the screen for you so you see what we're talking about. Obviously, this is going to be the Yogmoth list. Quite different in there. I suppose it's only like a week or two old, this kind of list, using the Abominable Gravers and the Rot Priests, kind of filling in the roles of Birds of Paradise and the extra ignoble Hierarchs as basically a way to try and explode out early and get that bit like mana advantage while surviving against things like Unholy Heat, Lightning Bolts, Red and Sixes, which are all over the format currently.
certainly, it's no longer your mana dogs are gonna die to just lightning bolts and unholy hits on turn one. You force your opponent to interact with your cards higher the chain, which is probably favorable for you.
Yeah, like when I'm on the Yawgmoth side, I kind of think I'm a slightly favored in this matchup, mainly because I have endurances in my deck and I can try and I can get them at instant speeds. As long as I can keep the graveyard down into a minimum, I feel like I can do my game plan better than they're doing their game plan. But we're going to see how that works out. Let's see if we can get up the blue-red Murktide list. Obviously, on Daniel, been killing it all day yesterday, and today he decided he didn't want to lose at all. Let's see if we can carry that over to the finals. Key cards in this matchup. Anyone sticking out to you? I'm looking at Dress Down. Dress Down with lightning bolts stops that kind of undying effect.
Yeah, dress down and lightning bolts, as you said. Murktide region, I think, is just a key card. It's a great way to pressure and actually win through your opponent's potentially slogged board, while also being able to be big enough to fight through endurances. But I think the truly key card is probably counterspell, as getting to counterspell Yogmoths is a very powerful effect. And once you prevent Yogmoths and Grists from coming down, you should be able to fly over the rest of the deck.
Yeah, being sat on the Yogmoth side, I think the key game plan for Izzet is to get their life total down as low as they possibly can. The lower the life total is, the less chance of that combo actually happening is, because obviously Yawgmoth, it's not a free effect. They do have to sacrifice one life to be able to get one trigger from the powerful 4-drop. So
That is a great point.
and that's the main way I lose this matchup, is they end up going off with like Dragon Rage Channelers and using the flyover effects added with Lightning Bolts, big Murktides. Obviously, Grist is a super good answer to the big Murktides, but we're going to see how this plays out. We've got the players just shuffling up, getting ready for them to make the match so we can move down to them. But while we've got a bit of downtime, I do want to thank not only Adrian, who's working behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen. You don't get to see him. He has been pitting and graft all weekend long, doing all the slides for us, all the back rings queuing up, talking in our ears, making us, feel a little bit crazy at times. But, he's doing a stellar job. You don't understand the amount of work that gets put into these tournaments. And don't worry, me and Kanister, we're only here for 1 month only. You'll be back with Corey and Ross in no time. The usual two commentators for these events. We're just stepping in for them because sometimes people need a little break and give opportunities to the European team. That's what we'll call ourselves, the European team. And it's moving forward here. Kanister's decided to stand up and show us all his trophies and flex with me again. I've had my trophy here the whole time. Don't want to brag chat, but I've got this one here. I even made a little sign to go next to it. It says Will's one trophy. Kanister's just up there with, I don't know, they don't even look important, those trophies behind you.
Just a few.
Just a few. Just do you ever drink out of them when you win? I always say if I want a trophy that looked like a cup, I would be popping champagne into it and drinking, and like properly like that meme, where like someone comes in like 19th place, but they're like full on like opening champagne bottles and going crazy. That's me. I'm that guy.
That might have happened, yeah. Not with
You
me
did?
as the main character, but no. Well, the people coming over.
Oh, people come over and drink out of your own trophies? That can't
Yeah.
be right. I know I would not be having that. But no, own your own trophy. When you win your own, you can drink out of it. You're not drinking out of my trophy. It's like, I'll definitely start flexing them on that way. But
So
how are we getting on the
some people
matchups,
are just
Adrian?
wild.
Okay, so the pairings are made. They're going to make the matchups, and we're going to move down to it. They're just getting it done now. So we're moments away, ladies and gentlemen, from the finals of the Mad Trader Series. Who's going to be able to walk around away with $3,000 cash for first place? Remember, everyone in this top 8 was a subscriber to Mana Traders, so they do get that 10 times bonus. You don't have to be a Mana Trader subscriber to play in this tournament. You just have to sign up. Sign up to the website, play. Don't need to rent the cards from, etc. But if you do, it pays off, just like these two players we're seeing now. One's going to walk away with $2,000. The other's going to walk away with $3,000. Now we're into the match. Who is going to be the winner? Who is on the play? And it looks like Yawgmoth's on the play, but just an overgrown tomb tapped.
Yeah, playing a tapped overgrown tomb, but on the play it's fine. You can afford to do that. You probably can start with a Strangleroot Geist or something on turn 2, or a Wall of Roots or so. I would hope. So far we don't get to see our players' hands. Old Danielakos' keep seems okay. You're missing a red mana, so
Yeah.
you rely on your. Oh no, you don't. There's a Misty Rainforest. So yeah,
But
you
more
can just
importantly,
lead on
there's
a.
a spell snare in that hand.
Yeah, that's pretty big decision there. You see that Kukuza did not choose to play a 1-drop card, which means that the odds of a 2-drop happening on turn 2 are just really big, I think. Especially since the land was Overgrown Tomb, right? So it could have entered the battlefield untapped.
But this is where discipline's going to come into it, right? Like the urge to go Dragon Rage Channel into double bauble is quite high and quite big, and enough for them to be able to snap this off and not try and take the read of this
It
spell snare could
seems
potentially be great.
Yeah, it seems like an overpowering read. That said, like the spell snare is likely going to be relevant throughout the game. You can snatch a later game Strong root Geist with it, right? So that's always going to be an option. And developing the
Bundle.
DRC to pressure is good. As you have pointed earlier, reducing Yogmoth players' life points is of utmost importance.
That it is, and we can see in Bundle Graves are drawn for the turn. They're giving us kind of that explosive draw. Now, as the next turn, things like Calling Evolutions, Yogmoth, all being able to be cast and all be able to get some of the best cards. Where on the other side, we draw Ledger Shredder in to counterspell. Another ball was
Pretty
going to come
interesting
down.
decision here. You could just decide to play Ledger Shredder, but it is a little bit dangerous, and it does let your opponent resolve a Yogmoth while you don't currently have answers to it. So you'd probably want to avoid that and keep up the counter spell to be safe from harm.
Can we just talk about that attack? That's such a big brain hedge attack there. Like if we block it for the Wall of Roots, Wall dies to Lightning Bolt. We block it with the Abundant Grazer, it dies to Unholy Heat. And yet we value our creatures so much in that we decide not to block and just take the 1 point of damage. I love that attack there. And I love the no block.
Yeah,
I love both of it. I love all that combat phase.
I mean, I would have blocked with the Grazer, but so
Yeah,
I'm
but you're
not sure if I
Canister
love the no block,
MTG.
but
We're not all big brain like you. We can't be. It's literally, a disadvantage to you that your brain is so big to do blocks like that. I would have been like, nah, they've got
it's
simple blocks.
certainly a very powerful attack. It's just like kind of very, taking the
But then, let's break that attack down a little bit more then. So I guess even if I did block, that means that they would have to use one of their lands, the red mana there, to kill one of my creatures, which means they won't be able to have counter spell up. So I think on that side, I would hedge that. I think, okay, maybe I do want to block here. Yeah, sure. If you want to use one of your mana to keep this, I get to resolve one of these big spells in my hand.
The true danger would be like an unholy hit targeted at Wall of Roots, hitting Delirium with the Surveil trigger, killing the wall, and then your Grazer block would turn into a charm block. So that's what you were scared of, I guess.
Yeah, that would be pretty brutal. We're choosing to keep using the Wall of Roots here instead of tapping our mana and not ever tapping the Twilight Mire. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, if we held up, say, a the Overgrown Tune. In fact, we tapped the Twilight Mire and took a point of damage for our troubles. So if we're going to use any
Yeah,
land there,
not,
maybe a bit of
if,
missequencing.
I don't fully understand this move, to be honest. But yeah, Nurturing Peatland is tapped now. Twilight Mire is able to produce double black at sorcery speed, at instant speed. So that is the reason to do that, I guess, because it does let you use your Yogmoth. If your Yogmoth resolves, you are able to sacrifice your Grazer, put a -1/-1 counter on Dragon Rage's Channeler, and then you could proliferate on your opponent's turn with the discard a card ability if that is what you
Okay.
would like to do.
Yeah, you found the line. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't see that. And we're going to come across the 3 points of flying damage, dropping down to 15. Yawgmoth drawn for the turn. Great draw here.
Really, really good draw. Yeah, just keep playing Yogmoths.
We went for it
Let's
last turn.
see.
I think we're going to do it again.
Yeah, let's see if Kukuza taps in the same way, and yeah, that does seem to be the case. So certainly, just looking to proliferate.
There is an Unholy Heat here. That will be able to deal with that Yawgmoth, though.
That is true.
And we're just straight up sacking this Bundle Grazer, hitting the -1 counter on the Dragon Race Chandler. That's going to prompt the Unholy Heat to get fired off now. Get our Surveil trigger. We are going to fetch first, probably a basic island, because we've still got to consider a spell snare. No, we're just going to take the full free. Bring in the Steam Vents.
This game is
And
actually not looking great for Kukutsu, right? Like typically, Yogmoth thrives in games that are a bit higher resources for both players rather than just being about reducing all the resources to nothing, right? And just Kukutsu has no cards right now, almost. Strangled Guys and Urge Evolution does let,
this spell snare is going to be beautiful.
yeah.
Oh, we get to see it. The one-up spell snare is going to catch that Strangled Geist.
So my prediction has proven to
It's
be
right.
right.
It's as always. And I also love that it took you 0.2 seconds to remind us all of that fact that your big brain managed to call it early as well, as we're going to come across here with this Dragon Rage Chandler. Of course, if we could get like an endurance here and exile that graveyard, this Dragon Rage Chandler would die. It only has the extra +2 currently because of the Delirium in the graveyard. But this Murktide into Ledge, or Ledge Shredder, sorry, into Murktide is going to be pretty big. A lot of writing on the wall. We would need something. Well, a Grist would be good enough to deal with the Murktide, because we
Yeah,
can
it's
make
not
a
not
creature off the
looking
garden.
good. It's not looking good though. You don't have many life points. You don't have creatures in play, so
A bundle Grazer.
Arboreal Grazer off the top. Not much better than
Well, we can
an
evolution it,
ignoble
right?
hierarch would have been.
We can evolution it into a Grist.
We
Uh,
can, you can.
we
That is true.
Can we now? Yeah, we can still go that route. Still not great though. 4 points damage. Plus, we're casting 2 spells this turn, so the Ledge Shredder gets to trigger yet again. We got to take a pain for our troubles, so that will drop us down to 9. Definitely going to be an uphill battle, and yeah, I think you're right. I think will be going into a game 3, and that is what I love about Magic the Gathering, especially at high level tournaments. I want to see all 3 games. I want to see the most amount of Magic played, especially at high level. See the intricate details of how people are tapping mana, how they're leaving up certain mana. Like I didn't see the Twilight Mire play there, but we did it 2 times in a row, like you said. For that out, that would have happened or would have paid off. Unfortunately for them, obviously the Yogmoth at an unholy heat, but. Great line. Let's see how we want to move forward from here. I think we are going to use this evolution on the Abundant Grazer. Trigger in the Ledger
Certainly.
Shredder.
It is also game 1, so we're gonna be moving into game 2, right? If we reach the conclusion of it, which
Oh, did I
it
say?
seems like
Sorry.
we're going to.
Why do I think Yagmoth took down game 1? Am I
Well, just because you just like the deck so much and you're so excited
super
that in your
favoritism?
mind it starts a game ahead.
Well, I'm not saying I'm doing everything in my power for Yagmoth to win here, but I'm trying to give it all the positive energy I can. But
Ooh,
probably not too much
iteration.
when an iteration gets drawn off the top into an opponent that's got no cards left in their hand. So remember, expressive iteration, we get to look at the top 3, put 1 into our hand, 1 into exile, we can cast a turn, and the other to the bottom of our graveyard. And as well as that, the Jagran's Chandler gets to manipulate the top of our deck if we don't want that card to be in those top 3 that we're going to see. So let's move forward. So I think there isn't going to be a game 3 currently. It will be moving to a game number 2.
Exactly. So yeah, all Danielakas just needs a counter spell to just absolutely lock this game. Otherwise, he's gonna be heavily favored. Anyways, so
And that is the Kanister MTG excellent opinion. Do you know what? Some people absolutely believe that Kanister is one of the most impactful and important people in Magic history, and that he has cleared the path to save Magic during the pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a huge number of content creator folk that we wouldn't be here without him. Of course, it is MTG Kanister. We thank you. Not that
you're
that's
welcome.
getting spammed in the chat currently. You're welcome. It
So
makes me laugh.
we see Grease being destroyed, Ledger Shredder attacking phase, going down to 5 lives. Kukutsu drawing an ignoble hierarch.
Strong play.
Not the
We
best.
get a redraw into a mismatch. We are going to a game number 2, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now I know exactly what game we're in because I apparently can't do simple math of 3 matches. Let's look at the sideboard for our Yogmoth player. What could they be bringing in this matchup to try and show up? What do you like here?
And well, as you have said, you are the player with probably many more matches played with Yogmoth
Oh,
than
you want me to step it up on this
me
one? Okay.
personally.
Yeah,
But
go for it.
we see endurances, we see scavenging ooze. Those cards tend to be relatively okay in the matchup, so you could use them as ways to attack Murktide's graveyard and creatures that stick. On top of that, we see Thoughtseize as a way to fight against counter spells. Do you like Fatal Push or Pylon as removal options?
I like Pylon because it can hit a Murktide as well as a Ledger Shredder if needs be. And obviously, we've seen multiple times lots of little dorky creatures go on the battlefield. Pylon being able to also have Convoke itself, Surveil 2, kind of manipulate to a VAR deck. So yeah, I do like bringing that one in as well. I think you hit the nail on the head. Endurances Scavenging Oozes, potentially Fort Caesars, and a mix of Fatal Pushes or Pylons. But we don't want to dilute our main game plan, right? This is one of the key things that people do in
Exactly.
Magic is they will board out like, okay, young wolves, let's board some of them out, and a couple of, I don't know, Wall of Roots and a couple of these, and okay, now we've just said, why am I not drawing my combo cards? Well, we've boarded half of them out, so it's going to be harder for us to draw them. I think you want to keep
So
the
do you
grists
have
in.
cards that you are looking to cut then? Something that is not particularly exciting, maybe Hapatras, maybe the Eldritch Evolutions do not match up that great against the card Counterspell.
Yeah, I actually
Anything
board out
else
all
come
my
to mind?
evolutions in any deck that's got counter magic. I board all my evolutions out because obviously it has the added text that says sacrifice a creature. Not normally too bad for us with undying creatures, but when it gets counterspell, it does feel pretty rough. So I do like taking those out. I don't think I like the ignoble hierarch here either. As much as the turn one explosiveness is nice, I don't think it's going to line up as well against things like Ragavan as much as a bundle of Grazer would, or potentially Young Wolf. So how many cards are we looking at bringing in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if we board out 4 of those, one of those, we need to cut 2 more. Hapatra, we said that is not going to be too great, and potentially another Young Wolf. They're good, but the heads up play is that the opponent's going to board out the Ragavans because it lines up bad against Young Wolf. So dropping down to 3 of them, I don't hate that either.
Yeah, that's a dance that you can go on many levels on, but with this specific list also having Arboreal Grazer and Young Wolf, just Ragavan just kind of matches up poorly against all the one drops in the deck, so it makes you're even more incentivized to cut it. So I would not be surprised if Daniel Akos chooses to cut the monkeys for the matchup.
Well, we will get to be on the play. Let's look at the opening hands. Does look like that pylon and an endurance. Well, there's 2 endurances in the main anyway, but one of them is going to be in hand, so we get to keep that graveyard at bay if we need to. We can start off with, we got a 1-drop. We've got a Young Wolf to start off as well. So we've got insurance against Ragavan. And looking at the hand on the opposite side, they've kept the Ragavans in, but that's one's going to get pushed to the bottom as they are on a mulligan to 6. So just consider Lead Shredder and Dress Down, as well as a bunch of land for
Yeah, it might
Daniel
be
here.
might be the case of just leaving like 1 or 2 Ragavans in the deck and then not especially looking to draw it, which is why we put it back from the opening hand, which is normally when you want to see your Ragavan the most. So that's kind of a tell that could have been the strategy.
We spoke with Daniel and his read on the game and how good that would have been. He decided the one card to put to the bottom of his deck was going to be Ragavan, and then he sees a turn 1 Young Wolf played. That must feel great when that happens. Wall of Roots going to come down here. We're going to get in for 1 point of damage. And now, as early as now, we can cast basically every card in our hand if needs be. Be interested to see how Daniel goes, if he wants to leave up the Dress Down counterspell or lead off with a Ledger Shredder. Looks like he's going to be holding up some of the interaction as with Dress Down and Counterspell.
Probably looking to not let a Yogmoth get deployed or regressed. Playing a Shredder here is slightly dangerous, and then it makes it easy for a dangerous card to resolve and the game to slip by. That said, Kukutsu has an alternative play of just playing a Wall of Roots, a land, and holding up an Endurance at instant speed, which is really, really powerful.
I actually really like that. I also kind of like this play as well, not attacking with the Young Wolf, making them think that they have a call of calling. So potentially they will do nothing with their next turn.
Yeah, certainly that does make it harder for your opponent to play, so the 1 damage probably doesn't matter too much if you think you're most likely are going to end the game with your combo, so I like it.
I think I like throwing out the pylon here and getting rid of the Dragon Race Chandler, because if it gets eat some sort of counter magic, I can then just untap and play my Grist. But we decided to go with an endurance here. Again, it empties the graveyard, plus it is a 3/4 body that comes along with it. As we draw a Yogmoth off the top, we are missing our extra black mana though. Of course, that is a double black card, the only one in the deck.
That is true. That is true. That's a bit awkward because you could just try to play Grist, get it countered. Presumably, you have to expect that your opponent does have a counter spell based on how they played on turn 2 and 3, and then try to follow it up with Yogmoth on turn on the next turn, but not having the certainty of having the extra black source available is a little bit of a problem.
I think, like, if we didn't do it last time, I passed the turn here, right? As soon as that fetch line is cracked, I'm firing off the pylon because then I get to manipulate the top of my deck as well if I need to do that. We're still holding up the potentially a Call of Cooling, which we has to be respected over on Daniel's side. He's going to do that by playing Ledger Shredder, leaving up 2 open mana. But again, not fetching straight away means that if that fetch got cracked, a chord could be done in response. Spell Snare drawn for the turn. And we are end of turn going to cast this pylon by the looks of it. Taking out the Ledger Shredder.
We can surveil the black source onto the top of our deck, I guess.
Do you think that this isn't worth the counter spell? You think we're still just going to hold counter spell up? It's only a kill spell at the end of the day. How important is this Ledger Shredder?
Yeah, you probably just let it go. Although it's a bit rough because it's gonna be hard to stop the endurance without your Ledger Shredder in play. But if you just tap out and greased happens, that's even worse for you.
Could also look at trying to turn on, Delirium here. I suppose this would be a creature in the graveyard. We've got a fetch and 4 lands. We've got lightning. Well, we've got instant speed stuff in hand as well as dress downs. Not that at the minute we're on the defensive too much. So we want to go about it. We're deep in the tank. This could be the key
Certainly
turn of the
a
matchup.
tough decision.
Chat, I do want to thank you all for being here. I know this is on a 7-minute delay, so we don't get to interact with you enough, but I appreciate you all here watching the finals of the Match Race series. And remember, you could be taking part in these. Just go to the website, click on the part that says Mana Trader Series, and you'll be able to see previous series, the rules, and then how to take part yourself. All you need is a computer or a laptop that can run Modo. If you can do that, you can either rent the cards from Mana Trader themselves, enter this tournament, or buy the cards off whatever sites you need to do to build your own deck to take part in these. Remember, every month is a different format. Next month is Pioneer. Obviously, we've seen a lot of that recently to do with like the RCs and PTs that have been happening. So if that's your format and you're just getting into it, feel free to take part. And then if you do want to be a Mad Trader subscriber, there's lots of codes for you. There's one on the screen for you right now, Bash Pros. That will give you a 15% extra off your first couple of months to save yourself a bit of money. And then you get 10 times bonus on whatever you win in these series. I was a Mad Trader subscriber before they sponsored me or asked me to do these sort of things. Every month you're with them, you get a little bit extra added to your account. If that's more ticks, more earlier rental services, or you're just the money you pay each month is reduced. And not only that, Canister, you can pay for your Match subscription with MTGO ticks. It doesn't even have to be your money. So if you win more than you lose on Modo by grinding leagues, etc., you can sell those chests, use those ticks, pay for your Match subscription, and that basically means you get to play high level Magic for free. Why would you not want to do any of that? Is the question I need to ask everybody. As a Scavenging Ooze is the card drawn for the turn, and I quite like this. Right, this could bait out a counter spell because it's a good enough card to do that. But Spell Snare is going to be that counter spell. But now we get to untap and play the Grist, or not untap and play the Grist. We get to play the Grist this turn.
We just get to play the Grist, yeah. So it is pretty great to get to resolve the Grist. We did not quite catch the Surveil. I think a Thoughtseize ended up in the graveyard from the Surveil and a Strangleroot Geist. And afterwards we did draw the Scavenging Ooze. So it all makes sense. Now we get to destroy the Dragon Rage's Channeler, sacrificing Yogmoth. Makes sense. You put a lot of pressure on the battlefield, 5 power against 8 life points, and the Grist will die, but that's fine.
Yeah. We basically value taking the Dragon Channel off the board because it's the failed triggers. It being able to manipulate the top of the deck is too powerful. So yeah, we're going to kill that with the Grist, but that will end up eating a lightning bolt. But that's a nice 2-for-1, right? You know what I mean? They had to use 2 of their cards, went to the graveyard. Only one of ours did. Well, technically 2, but one comes back.
You don't lose the Yogmoth, so you get card advantage here. Another Grist, that's not bad.
So we're going to start firing off this Consider here. We need a bit of action because this is 5 power that can come across, dropping them down to 3. Lightning Bolt is a good one. That'll be able to deal with that Yogmoth if we want to go and kill that, which we do decide to do.
Pretty good. You get to take the Endurance hit, counterspell Greased, and you are actually okay if you top deck a Murktide region or Expressive Iteration into a region, I think.
I think that we say, iteration as a top deck so many times in modern, especially when you see this
Yeah,
deck. And there it is
see,
off the top,
simple,
as you called it. Exactly what
simple.
to
That's
do.
that's the plan.
It's easy magic when you
It's
just stack the top of your deck how you want it. Okay, what 3 cards does you want to see here? Remember, one goes to hand, one will go to exile that incast the end of the turn, and the other one will go to the bottom of the library.
I
Looks like
think
we've
it's one of
decided.
the very significant strengths of the Murktide deck that just can always top deck the iteration that just instantly puts it back in the spot of being the player with more cards with relevant ways to engage.
I do need to say here, we've hit another grist. So if that first grist we actually ticked up, we would have hit grist into grist and got ourselves multiple insect tokens that turn.
Yeah, that would be a great coverage moment. So a little bit wasted here, but it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, I
The
think we're
play
going to have
made
to.
sense, of course.
Oh yeah, of course, it made sense. It could have just been a nice little highlight moment, but noting that there was a grist on top of a grist on top of the deck with a grist in play. We saw it yesterday. We saw grist into grist making 2 tokens, but we haven't seen more than that. We're going to use the dress down at main phase because maybe a little bit of desperation here. We need some sort of interaction as the endurance on the other side of the battlefield will be able to finish us off. As we are at 2 life points. Potentially, we were going to a game number 3. I did speak about how I love 3 games of Magic at this high level, and I do think we will be seeing it unless there is a good top deck of potentially only Unholy Heat right now. Dragon Age
We see
Chandler,
Dragon Rage's Chandler top deck,
it's a
which is actually
blocker.
interesting because, well, it is not a blocker anymore. All Danielakos waited till the end step for the dress down to
Oh, no.
resolve. And
No.
I was no, I think it actually makes sense. I think it's a pretty reasonable play. Kind of accepting the fact that just providing a champ blocker does little enough for you that you're willing to bank on basically just letting yourself draw Unholy Heat or Bust. Because if you draw an Unholy Heat and you get the extra benefit of dress down turning off your opponent's mana dorks for the extra turn, you might think you are getting a bigger enough of an advantage. So
It's
despite it looking kind of foolish in retrospect with the DRC draw, I think it makes
yeah,
sense to play like that.
I get what you mean. It's like we're hedging towards one sort of card being instead of the other. We could have done it main phase. We could have drawn a blocker and played it, but we went for the high upside line of potentially turning off future Strangleroot Geists off the top and things like that with this
Yeah.
down and a turn that moves into the next turn. Okay, but we are going to get ourselves a game 3. I love this. I love game 3 Magic, especially in the finals. What do we think has been brought in at the sideboard here? We didn't really get we saw dress down, but we didn't see things like Fury, Subtleties, even Blood Moons potentially. What do you like here?
Well, the Furies and subtleties are probably there, right? If I have to guess, I assume since we've seen a Ragavan in a game on the draw, then probably the cuts were like 2 Spell Pierces, 2 free Ragavans. That would be to bring 2 Unlicensed Hairs, a Subtlety, and a Fury. Besides that, you could consider using Magus of the Moon or Blood Moon, especially since it's the Golgari Rot Farm version. You could add an extra dress down. You could play a Braid as a weak removal spell, or you could play Brazen Borrower as a way to interact with Yogmoth a little bit more, given that it's an instant speed version of a way to deal with a 4 toughness creature. But uh, there's many options. Not sure which ones I am exactly excited about.
I do like that they'll be on the play now. Potentially, a unlicensed Hearse can come down a turn earlier, and if that can start eating away at the graveyard, and keeping it nice and small, potentially comboing going off is going to be a bit harder for them. So, got everything to play for. Remember, there is basically $1,000 on the line for the winner of this game. So we're playing $1,000 tournament. It looks like we're going to be jumping in just as we had a bit of Modo lag going on. So let's try and break down what's happened here. So it looks like we're going to turn number 2 over on Qta's side. They did bring in that Fatal Push. It managed to get rid of a Dragon Age Chandler that probably was a turn 1 into a couple of spells, and we've turned 4 deck. It's already turn 2, and there is 2, 4, 6, 8 cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, that's
Love to
dredge
see
like
it.
numbers.
And and on the other side is an Endurance and a Strangleroot Geist. And I quite like this line of, yep, Strangleroot Geist this turn. Is it going to eat anything? Anything going to happen? We left up Dress Down and Counter Spell instead of playing the iteration last turn. How are we going to move
Yeah,
forward?
we skipped this early 2 turns, but that early exchange of resources did not seem to favor Kukuza. There must have been a mulligan from Kukuza's side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, at 7 cards, turn 3 on the play. So this was probably a mulligan to 5.
Oof, rough. Yeah, that
No,
makes
it was
sense.
on the draw. It was a mulligan to 6 because Kukuza was the player on the
Okay,
draw
now
this game. Yeah, makes sense.
that,
So we're fighting
this
from a mulligan against Murktide, who's getting to play iterations. Might be a bit tough because you might not get to a point where you can present your threats in uncomfortable spots while old Danielakos is resolving in unlicensed hairs.
Well, I feel like the unlicensed Hearst is going to be the one that's going to come down here. So we put an iteration into hand, unlicensed Hearst into exile. We get to cast that one for the turn. So in response, we're going to play this endurance. Are we going to target ourselves or our opponent? Looks like we're going to target our opponent. So this we've got a bit of bit of a beat down stick now with this being a 3/4. We draw it in a fort seeds for the turn. So we get to take that iteration out of the hand. Well, if we want to do that, we're gonna cycle first and draw a Grigori Rot Farm. Now we're gonna Fort Seize. Iterations straight away out of the hand. It wasn't even a consideration. That one was gone. And then we're gonna play this Rot Farm, bouncing back one of these overgrown tombs.
If
Connect
you
for
think
3 points
about
of
it,
damage.
yeah, if you think about it, Overgrown Tomb, excuse me, Golgari Rot Farm is kind of like iteration, right? Just also like 2 for 1.
Is it
Although it
it's
seems
pretty
much
base.
less impressive.
It's a pretty base play, I heard. As a
Yeah.
Brazen Burrower drawn for the turn. That one did come out of the sideboard. Obviously, has the ability to go on an adventure. It can bounce a non-land opponent back to the hand if needs be. Just a couple of land now. We also drew the Canopy Gardener for the turn. Bit awkward because if we play that this turn, which is going to give us probably the most of an effect, as in a creature on the battlefield, we'll then have full knowledge in Daniel's side of that. Oh, they've just got a land in hand, so we can kind of keep going with how we want to move forward here. So they decide to play the overgrown tomb taps, not give away that little bit of information. How much does stuff like that play out in Magic normally in your experience? Like keeping that one unknown card opposed to playing potentially, I say best play is not super up advantage having a 0/1 plant on the battlefield, but um, how do you
I
normally
tend
find that?
to value making plays that make sense much more than I like to conserve information, but it is possible that being a streamer for a living has taught me to value that less than other people, as I'm
And
used to people watching.
and that's why we asked you for these opinions, and now this is a good line that obviously we didn't really see because of the Brazen Burrow, but flashes in, is able to crew the Hearst, block. The Hearst can then tap, gain an extra 2 power, and manages to block that endurance and put it into the graveyard. So now Cthulhu not really got much going on. Does draw Ragavan, which doesn't look great in the face of a Brazen Burrow. 3
Yeah, not
points is going to
necessarily, but what looks great is a 2 power creature that's able to crew the hearse. I guess that alone is pretty powerful, and on top of that, the counter spell is just it's
cat
just
spell
rough. It's
dressed
gonna
out.
be almost impossible to come back through a counter spell. You need to top deck, and you need to top deck twice, and you need to top deck twice in time, which you don't have too much of. So, I think the game is going to be pretty rough for Kukuza.
No, I think you are absolutely correct. Daniel, of course, is played in every single Mana Traders this year. This is the 5th one, and this is the 5th tournament. And is it going to be 5th time lucky for them? And they're going to walk away with that $3,000 and the bragging rights saying that they managed to take down the Mana Trader series. Wall of Roots
Wall
off
of
the
Roots
top.
is it's not it.
It's not ideal. So we are definitely going to be in chump block territory here. We're able to make these 0/1s. I'm thinking, is what do we need? A chord's not going to resolve. Multiple blocks are going to have to happen. We are in super rough spot. I think we are moments away from Daniel to being able to take it down. Spell Snare, of course, is the last draw of this turn. We've
It's
spoken
actually
so much.
unlucky as this person has been drawn right after the
Wall of Roots
Wall of
comes
Roots
down.
has been resolved. So it's a bit too
Right,
late for it, but
we're valuing our life total here, throwing some blocks in there. Draw Young Wolf for the turn. Unholy Heat, Dress Down, Counter Spell, Spell Snare in hand on the other side. We're going to let that one resolve. We could end up doing some sort of, let them chump block with it, then Dress Down in response so the Undying doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Just a
The
smart above
downside
Canal.
of Dress Downing in that way is that Unlicensed Hairs would die if it's animated and Dress Down isn't playing, given that its power upsetting ability is it's an ability, so it does not naturally have power or toughness.
Dropping down to 4 life. Like we're in a controlling spot here, right? Like we've got a flyer. There's nothing on the other side. We can stop basically anything that's going to be happening. Another young wolf is not going to do it. We know that it's game over, but they do not know. Obviously, it is not. They don't have God mode like we do here, but it is open deck list. It's been open deck list all weekend long, and we have battled it down to these last 2 players. And advantage bar is extremely to the top of your
Well,
screen, going for
I
the Is it
think
Murktide player.
Danielakos knows because he gets to
Oh
see
yeah,
his own
they
card
get
as
to.
well.
Oh, lightning bolt seals it up. Lightning bolt face, come across with this brazen burrow, do the last 3 points of damage, but we're not even going to get there. We're going to scoop them up. Congratulations to Daniel being able to take this down 5 times. Lucky for them. They played in every single one. They've accumulated a load of points to get to that, top 8 slot at the end of the year. But now they don't need it. They've got the automatic invite, and you at home can be able to do that. Kanister,
Yeah,
that
congrats to Danielakos. Like we've seen some pretty good play from him across the weekend and pretty impressive moves. Also, many people like to downplay the power of the Murktide deck nowadays, but it's still a very solid deck that can fight through basically any matchup with and has tools to battle against any opponent. So pretty impressive showing throughout the uh, weekend, I would say.
Yeah, I would say like if I had to pick a player this weekend to stand out with their plays, they're thinking of the meta and how to come about it for each round. I'd say Daniel is probably the one that comes to mind. We've seen him pick up 1 game loss in the Swiss, I think, which was on camera. Other than that, we've seen high level play from that guy, taking it down with Is It Murktide. So congratulations, they're now $3,000 richer because they are a Madtrade subscriber, so they do get that 10 times a bonus. On that one, I think that's going to be the end of it for me and you. It's been an absolute pleasure, my friend, to be your dance partner all weekend. I hope we get to do this again super soon because kind of
It's been
enjoy
a
it.
blast.
Don't tell Canister chat, but I do quite enjoy casting with him. I want to thank Adrian putting on all the work behind the scenes for you all. You can't hear him, you don't get to see his face, but he has been putting on an absolute stellar performance for you all, ladies and gentlemen. So let's see that in the chat. I want to see thank you. Adrian's going off in there. For me, thank you very much. Canister, thank you very much. Mad Traders, thank you for having us this week. We're going to see Corey and Ross are probably going to be back next month. Remember, it is Pioneer. Go subscribe, go play in it, go do everything you need to do, and hit that follow button. Speak to you all super shortly in, I don't know when you're going to see the match is going next, but next month. Have a good one, ladies and gentlemen. See you later.
Thanks you.